Snowball theory is that it snowballed. That Moses made a claim. He had revelation at Sinai. He got a few people to believe him. Not everyone, of course, because you can't get a whole people to believe. It's something that happened to you personally. And you can't convince a mass of people that something happened if it didn't happen. So he convinced a small group. That's why every group starts with a small group. And then it snowballed. Okay? And suddenly the Jewish people, who were 3 million, slowly more and more of them began to believe that this is what happened. Okay? The reason why this is completely unreasonable is because we don't find anything that can happen naturally in the world will always repeat itself. Anything that can happen naturally will always repeat itself. Okay? And we don't find any time in history where a belief snowballed. That means you already have the people. Okay? And the belief snowballed through the people more and more and more. You have more people joining, right? But you don't have already established people where more and more people in this group begin to believe it more and more. We don't have this happening ever. So we find that as a human phenomenon, this actually never ever happens. If there's a belief that someone is trying to convince people of, okay? So let's say we're going to come to the American people and say that in 1915, there was actually a communist revolution in America. Did you know about that? Okay, we'll go to 1815, okay? 1815 was a communist revolution in America for about 30 years, and then there was a backlash. We went back to democracy, right? And I try and convince you of this, right? I may get a small group of adherents to believe that. It's never going to snowball and take over the entire people. It will never turn into a belief that the entire people have, simply because it's unbelievable. So I'm throwing this in, even though I don't think this is something that we need to really discuss, but that's another idea that is brought up that some people try and suggest happened. Because what happens is, here's the thing. We have an event, right, which is an unbelievable event and a pivotal event, the pivotal event for the Jewish people. Because this basically makes or breaks the value of the Torah. Okay? And when you have an event like this, the question is, how are we going to... We look at it, did this happen? Didn't it happen? If I believe it didn't happen, then why is it that so many people believe in it? Right? Or I can choose to believe it did happen. If I believe it did happen, how do I come to that belief? Right? So ultimately, there's only one way to believe that this actually happened, and that is if it actually happened. In other words, there's no, the way it played itself out, that Moses said, every single one of you witnessed it, can only be believed if in fact that is what happened. So Moses actually put himself into a catch-22, or I don't know if that would even be the right term, but into a checkmate. He checkmated himself. He left no option other than that this really happened. Because if it didn't really happen, there was no way of him substantiating the story of revelation at Mount Sinai. And the reason why there's no way of him substantiating that is from the fact that we know that every Jew believed it. If only a few Jews believed it, then we understand that Moses was like all the other leaders. He had a claim. Either it did happen or didn't happen. Some people believed it. Okay, either you want to go with it or you don't. But the fact that every Jew believed in this story tells us that there was something that was absolutely compelling to them. And the only thing that can be was that they actually experienced it. Yes. Let me ask you a question. I don't know if you're going to want to answer this or not. How many of you believe in UFOs? Okay? Okay, so I am sure that we're not going to get a unanimous decision on that. Okay? I'm sure if I go out in the street and I point and say, do you see over there? I will be able to convince some people. I have some credibility. Rabbi, that works for people actually just because you have a title rabbi, so people start believing you. It's true. Okay? Does that work for lawyers too? The reverse? Okay. Right? But you go out and you say, so you're never going to get everyone to believe. Whatever you have working for you. So they would say, I experienced something, I don't know what I experienced, right? Imagine if everyone, let's say we have 100,000 people on the street, they all experienced a phenomenon, which is like an out-of-body type of an experience, right? And they all know exactly what they experienced. They don't say, I experienced something, I don't know what it is. I know exactly what I experienced. This is exactly what, and they all have the exact same experience. They all come out and say, I experienced. You experienced the exact same thing. Right? What would that tell you?
That they experienced something.
That they experienced. Not something. They experienced something particular.
Yes,
they know exactly what they experienced. That's what happened at Sinai.
The question is, what is this?
But they're telling you what it is. They're telling you what it is.
How can they tell what it is if they cannot comprehend what it is?
Because
there is no way to
Because let's say there's a voice that says, I am God, you're God. And they're experiencing it from a realm where there is no other way of describing this from a human experience. They know it's an out of human experience. Telling them, I am God speaking to you. I am God speaking to Moses so that you can all hear me speaking to Moses and know that Moses is a true prophet, which is what the Torah says, right? So the Torah is only telling us what our ancestors tell us they experienced. You understand? That's why they all absolutely believed in the Torah, because they had that experience. It wasn't a vague experience like many of our spiritual experiences. It was a very defined experience, and they knew what they were experiencing. Otherwise, they would not be subscribing to it.